Hello and welcome to the Imagine Crafts YouTube channel. My name is Lynn and today I am going to make a couple of artist trading cards. I'm starting off with this large sheet of watercolor paper. It actually measures 9 by 12. On camera I'll do 2 of them, but I will be making in total 12 of these. And so what I find fun, but also kind of speeds up the process a little bit, is to make just one large background and then I will cut these down to size. And what I am doing is this is just clear acetate. You could use a bit of packaging material. I'm swiping on some VersaColor ink and then giving it a spritz of water. And then I'm using this acetate to dab and smear that ink onto my watercolor paper. And I am wiping my acetate dry in between re-inking it because I don't want to water down my ink pad. So if you want to do this, whether you're using a lot of water or a little bit of water, it is always best to just dry that off a little bit. Even though it's the exact same color, you're not going to be cross-contaminating colors or anything because I will be bringing in a second color, but you just don't want to accidentally dilute your ink pad. I am using distilled water. That is what I keep in my craft room all the time. And distilled water, if a little bit gets into your ink pad, at least it won't cause any sort of a funky smell, because with regular tap water, over time, it can develop a smell because of whatever material, bacteria, minerals, etc. that are in there. And now I'm going in with a second color, and I am, again, just dabbing here and there. One thing to keep in mind is the more water you spritz, the wider the color will spread and the softer it will look. The less water you use, the more intense the color will be, and the more compact that color will be because it doesn't have all of that water to help it kind of spread out across the page and sort of smear. So that's how you can sort of control, where you're getting large splotches of color that do have that very watercolor effect, and where you have more intense color that's a little bit more jagged, more sharp, and maybe looks a little bit more like you've splattered ink in that area, for example. And then you can play with anything in between. So this is one of those things that's really, it's just very freeform. You just do whatever you like because you can't really measure these things in terms of exactly how much ink, exactly how much water you're using. It's just one of those things where, just keep looking at your background panel and just add to it as you see fit. Okay, so now I will cut this down. Artist trading cards measure 2.5 wide by 3.5 tall. And if you're unfamiliar with what an artist trading card is, it's often shorthanded to ATC. I looked it up just out of curiosity in terms of how this idea originated, and it did originate from an artist. I think he was a painter, and I think look it up, and I could be wrong. I think he was out of Sweden, and he actually created this idea of these miniature pieces of art on this size of card. The idea being that he wanted to actually create a swap where he invited other artists to do the same, to create small pieces of art and bring it to this event, and then they would trade these cards with each other. So you would make multiples of the same and then trade them. And it was almost like a little business card, but with your artistic flair. So in card making and paper crafting, you'll often find these are traded in a similar fashion. At a lot of conventions, there might be ATC swaps, so artist trading swaps, where you just make a bunch. Generally, they are the same, or at least feel like they are part of the same collection, and then you just trade them. So I recently did a live stream on my channel about gel printing, and I was inspired, so I pulled my gel plate out, and I'm going to do some gel printing with some different Imagine Crafts supplies. So I've got my Brilliance ink pads here, and I know it's really hard to see anything at all on here. It's so light, but look what happens after I pull up this piece of paper, which I'm laying and smooshing down. So you can see all of that lovely, it's hard to see on camera, but there's that lovely shine from the Brilliance inks, ink pads. I used 2 different colors, so it's very subtle, but I like this soft look, and where you get those splatters of intense color, that is from the fireworks. But I'm not gonna spray it because I didn't want the fireworks spray to take over. And the fireworks spray have a little bit of shine to them as well. There's a little bit of that sort of mica in them that helps them shimmer too. So everything is just gonna have a very nice, soft, but at the same time shimmery look to it. And here I've gone ahead and done the same thing. So you can take your ink pads direct to your gel plate, or you can use your brayer to pick up that ink. And here I want it to go a little bit more subtle with those splatters, so I'm gonna just use my brayer and lightly over top just move them around. How is this different from just ink blending on some paper? One of the things that the brayer helps to do is it really helps to smooth out that ink. You can see here, I've got a little bit of color variation, but that's mostly because I splattered the fireworks, and then I use my brayer again to smooth that out. So I almost have a little bit of a marbled effect here, and it's rather effortless to get this really soft and smooth background. I happen to have a circular gel plate because odd-shaped gel plates tend to be a little bit more affordable than your standard square or rectangular shaped ones. So often, you can look for that, and being that circle is 8 by 8, I can still get panels for my USA 2 size cards, my 6 by 6 cards, my 5 by 7 cards. So I felt like the 8 by 8 is a really nice size, even though it is circular, and most of what I create is rectangular. But I can fit a good rectangle in there, so it all works out in the end. Okay, so I'm going to prepare a couple of pieces to start to assemble my ATC. I have a die cut from Spellbinders. It's part of their wax seal collection. I've got a stamp that I'm going to use for my sentiment. And I started off by just rounding the corners on my ATC. The sharp edges were, for some reason, just really bothering me. So this is a very small rounded corner. The idea of these, the reason why these are the size that they are is because they're actually the same size as baseball trading cards. And I think that was one of the things that, I don't know if that was an original consideration when that artist first started this idea of artists making small works of art and then trading them with each other. But definitely in the paper crafting, card making circles and community, this size is pretty ideal because if you like to collect these, there's so many convenient sleeves, baseball sleeves and binders and notebooks for just slipping them in and storing them. So that's a good part of the fun of it too, is to just collect these from your card making friends, and you just have a little bit of their art, a little bit of their style, and it's in a very convenient size to collect. And if you're part of a swap, what's often fun is that you sort of have this collection from everybody who participated in the swap, and it's sort of unique to that particular event. And so over in my Facebook group, I'm running such a swap, and so it's one of those things where it's a very unique collection. It's a small collection. The idea is not that you're trying to mass produce anything, but just that you're making maybe a handful of these, and maybe for the next swap that you participate in, it might have a different theme or different consideration for, a technique, a color, or, a brand of materials. So you're not, the idea isn't necessarily to create business cards over and over again en masse. It's just to have a bit of fun, have a little bit of a small sort of artistic style or expression, and then share that. So I am making two because the die set that I'm using is awesome. It's very snippable, and it has this branch with some leaves on it, and the die is one branch that has two birds on it. And so I just snipped it in such a way that I can separate out the birds and still have an interesting branch configuration. And that way, for the effort of die cutting once, I get two ATCs. And that's the other nice thing about this canvas size, because it is small, so you don't have to do a lot to it. I went a little bit extra on this. I've got some iridescent metallic thread, embroidery thread that I've nested up. I have my little sentiment, which I stamped, and it does have a coordinating die. And then for each person that's in my swap group, I made a wax seal with the initial of their first name, so that these trading cards are, I guess I wasn't sure whether I should use my first name so that they know who it came from, but I thought it would be nicer to kind of personalize it for them. So that's the direction I went in. And so everybody's going to have a sort of a monogrammed ATC from me. I hope that you enjoyed the techniques that I shared and the couple of ATC cards I made. Thank you so much, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!